Mason to the local park for some fresh air. He was born with cerebral palsy, but that's never stopped him from smiling, laughing, or lighting up a room with his presence. As we were sitting near the playground, I noticed a woman standing nearby with a judgmental smirk. That woman was HOA. She looked at Mason, then turned to the person next to her and whispered something. And then came the laughter. Sharp, cruel, unmistakably directed at my child. I was stunned. But before I could say anything, HOA's smile vanished the moment she realized who I was, and more importantly, who Mason's father is. I stood up, slowly, never taking my eyes off her. HOA froze, her expression faltering as her gaze flickered from me to Mason, and then back again. She knew she had messed up badly, but she didn't know how badly. Not yet. "I'm sorry," she muttered, trying to recover. "I didn't mean." "No," I interrupted, my voice calm but cold. "You meant exactly what you said." Her eyes widened when she finally made the connection. It wasn't just my presence that startled her. It was the tattoo on my wrist, the same one that used to be all over the news. It was the name. My name. "You're," she stammered. "You're his?" "Yes," I said quietly. "Mason's father is Major Daniel Cole. You remember him, don't you?" Silence. Of course she did. Everyone in this town remembered Daniel, the decorated war hero, the man who saved 12 lives overseas during his final tour. The man who passed away in a tragic training accident, leaving behind a pregnant fiancée and a legacy no one could ever forget. HOA's face turned ghostly pale. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, struggling to speak as if the weight of her own cruelty had finally settled on her shoulders. People were starting to look over. The air felt heavy. Mason, still unaware of the tension, was happily humming to himself, playing with a little red truck on the bench. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to defend my child. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to, because in that moment her silence said everything. But the story doesn't end here. What came after? The apology, the confrontation, the unexpected twist in HOA's past would change everything I thought I knew about that day. HOA finally found her voice, but it came out hoarse and trembling. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't recognize him. I didn't realize he was Daniel's son." I nodded slowly. "You didn't care to look. You just saw what you wanted to mock." She looked down, her hands wringing nervously. "Daniel, he meant a lot to me too." I narrowed my eyes. That caught me off guard. "What do you mean?" Her lip quivered, and for a moment I saw something in her eyes. Not guilt, not shame, but pain. Real buried pain. "We were friends in high school," she said softly. "Close friends. He was the first person who ever really saw me. The first to protect me when I came to this country and barely spoke English." That didn't match the cold, mocking version of HOA I had just witnessed. I said nothing, letting her continue. "But then he left for the army, and when he came back he wasn't the same. Stronger, wiser, and already yours." I felt a strange mix of emotions. Jealousy? No, something deeper. Sadness, maybe, for what was and what might have been. "I was bitter," HOA admitted. "Not because of you, not even because he loved you, but because he became a better person without me in his life. I envied that, I envied you, even before I knew who you were." She turned to Mason, her voice cracking. "And today, when I saw him, I didn't see Daniel. I saw weakness, and I lashed out. But now all I see is him." There was a long pause. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the leaves around the playground. Mason looked up and smiled at Hoa, unaware of the storm that had just passed and the one still brewing in all of us. I studied her. She looked lost, vulnerable, and yet somehow more honest than I'd ever seen her. But forgiveness wasn't something I handed out freely, not when it came to my son. "What happens next?" I said slowly. "Depends on what you do now." Hoa looked up at me, eyes shining with tears she hadn't yet let fall. "I want to make it right," she whispered. "Not just for you. For Daniel. For Mason." I didn't answer. I picked up Mason's little red truck and placed it gently in his lap. Because I knew this wasn't over. Hoa's past was tangled with ours in ways I hadn't begun to understand yet. And deep down, I had the uneasy feeling that what had just happened was only the beginning. The next day, she showed up at my door. I wasn't sure I wanted to open it. I stood behind the curtain for a good minute, just watching her. She looked like she hadn't slept. Her hair was pulled back carelessly, and in her hands was a worn photo album, wrapped in a faded scarf. I opened the door just enough to speak. "What are you doing here?" "I need to show you something," Hoa said. "Please, just 5 minutes." Against my better judgment, I let her in. She stepped quietly into the living room. Mason was in the other room watching cartoons, unaware that the woman who mocked him yesterday was now standing a few feet from the toys he played with every day. Hoa sat on the couch like she didn't belong there, and maybe she didn't, but what she pulled from her bag changed everything. She opened the album. Inside were photos I had never seen before. Daniel at 17 standing beside Hoa in front of a rusted truck. Daniel in his army cadet uniform, arms slung around her shoulders. Daniel in a hospital bed, face bruised and tired, Hoa sitting beside him, holding his hand. My breath caught. "What is this?" I asked. "After his first deployment," she said softly. "Daniel came back broken. He never told you about that time, did he?" I shook my head slowly. "He didn't want you to know. He was ashamed. That's when he started talking to me again. We weren't together, but we were there for each other." She paused, turned the page, revealing a letter, yellowed and torn at the edges. Daniel's handwriting. I recognized it instantly. "If anything ever happens to me, tell her I tried. Tell her I was scared. Tell her she saved me once, and I wish I could have done the same for her." My eyes stung. Hoa looked up. "I don't know who he meant. Maybe me. Maybe you. Maybe someone else entirely. But he carried pain you never saw. And so did I." She closed the album gently. "I can't take back what I said to Mason, but I can tell you this. Daniel saved my life long before he became a hero. And now, if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of honoring his legacy, in whatever way you think is right." I didn't know what to say. I still didn't trust her. Not fully. Not yet. But I could see it. She wasn't just trying to make herself feel better. She was trying to connect, to atone, to bring closure to something that had never really ended. Just then, Mason toddled into the room, clutching his truck. He looked at Hoa and smiled, actually smiled. "Hi," he said simply. Hoa blinked, tears welling up. "Hi, Mason," she whispered. And for the first time, I saw something in her expression I hadn't seen before. Hope. But something still nagged at me. That letter, those words, they weren't the end of Daniel's story. They were the beginning of another secret. And I was going to find out what it was. It was from Daniel's old commanding officer, Colonel Hughes. I hadn't spoken to him in years. He said he'd come across something while helping archive personal items from their last deployment. Something that belonged to Daniel. "I thought you should have this," he said. There was a letter, a sealed one, not addressed to anyone. But when I read it, I knew it was meant for you and Mason. He emailed me a scan. I opened the file with trembling hands. Daniel's familiar handwriting appeared again, this time shakier, as if it had been written quickly, in a moment of urgency. "Emily, if I don't come back, please tell our son he was never a burden. Not to me, not for a second. I was scared, not of war but of not being enough for him. For you. But you and Mason, you're my peace. And if the world is cruel to him, I hope it also gives him one person who sees him as I do, full of light. Tell him I love him, tell him I'm proud, and tell him to forgive this broken world, even when it doesn't deserve it. Love, Daniel." I didn't realize I was crying until the screen blurred in front of me. I printed the letter and framed it. That weekend, Hoa came back, not with excuses but with actions. She had started organizing a fundraiser in Daniel's name to support children with disabilities in our town. It wasn't to prove anything. She never asked for redemption. But sometimes people change because they're forced to see what they've become. And sometimes they want to do better. Over time, Hoa became a regular part of our lives, cautiously at first, then fully. Mason came to call her Miss Hoa. She taught him how to fold paper cranes. He gave her his red truck on his 6th birthday. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like a child's hand resting on the palm of someone who once didn't understand, or a framed letter on the wall, whispering love across time. Daniel was gone, but in the kindness we rebuilt, in the healing that followed, he was everywhere. And that's how the woman who once mocked my disabled child became one of the people who helped him shine.